Well, hi, this is John Sarver, and this is Thursday evening, and it's another My Solar Story. I think this is the 26th in our series, and tonight we're going to get another interesting story from John MIrsky, who's from Ann Arbor. As you can see from the screen there, he's going to talk about his path to a net zero home, and also his investment in the solar project at the Ozone House. So I think there's going to be, John's been doing a lot in his home, including geothermal and a lot of energy efficiency, which we all know is really kind of the first things you need to do before you go solar. So John, welcome, and why don't you go ahead and tell us your solar story.
Very good. Well, thank you, John. Good evening, everybody. And first of all, thanks to GLREA for hosting these solar stories. They really inform all of us and have informed me, and hopefully my story will also resonate with some of you and provide you insights into the kinds of things that are possible, not only with your own residents, but also in terms of investing to put solar on nonprofits. So there's my contact information, and that'll be on the last slide, and anyone is welcome to reach out to me. I thought first it would make sense to introduce myself and my wife. So my wife is Renata. She's a former high school teacher in Germany. We met when I was working in Germany, and I'll get to that in a second. She is a Washtenaw literacy volunteer and tutor and mentor. I am retired after working 37 years for the German conglomerate Bosch. Very large company, 400,000 employees, 85 billion in sales. I'm now a energy commissioner. I'm the chair of the Energy Commission in Ann Arbor and the Environmental Commission. I also am the board vice president of a new nonprofit in Ann Arbor called the Equitable Ann Arbor Land Trust. If anybody's interested in that, we could talk about that maybe towards the end. And I'm an active member of a couple of groups that are operating in the climate space. Voices for Carbon Neutrality, which is pushing the University of Michigan to be aggressive in its carbon neutrality move, and then also the Ann Arbor Climate Partnership. Our interests, as you can see, are environmental sustainability, climate action. We love getting in the outdoors, social justice, human rights, and of course, education and literacy. So this is a picture of our home. There's the address again. For those of you who know Ann Arbor a little bit, we're about 4 blocks from the entrance to the Arboretum off of Geddes. It's a 1956 home designed by James Livingston. It's in the mid-century modern style. It's about 2,350 square feet. That's on the ground floor. About, I would say, only maybe 25% of the basement is a full basement. The rest is crawl space. We purchased the house in 2014, and you can see some of the features here. It's a typical 2x4 stick-built house. It's a flat roof, as you can see. It's got a flat black membrane roof. The roof rafters are 2x10s, which I'll talk about a little bit later in terms of insulation. The exterior, as you can see, is brick and tongue-and-groove cedar siding. I have the original specs for the house, and nothing had been done up until when we bought it. It was all 4-inch fiberglass batt insulation. R12, probably maybe even less than that after all the years. And in the roof and the walls, there was nothing more in the roof, just our 4 inches. All of the windows were aluminum frame. They were dual paned sliders, but many of them had broken air seals, so they really were not very good in terms of an energy efficiency point of view. And then you can see some of the mechanicals at the bottom. We had an old furnace, an old air conditioner, and also a pretty old water heater. And you can see that none of them are very efficient by today's standards. So with all that, we got our first utility bill, and it was $1,400 for the first month. And it wasn't because the house was really that bad. The house was bad. But what we came to find out, an interesting little story, is that the previous renter of the house had grown marijuana in the basement. So they had the heat jacked up and the lights turned on, and that was part of the reason. But nevertheless, the house was not a very efficient home. So we had basically 4 strategies in terms of our house. The first was to implement energy conservation measures first. The lowest cost and the lowest embodied energy measures are those where you don't have to buy and generate energy at all. So those are things that we partook first. The next thing was electrify everything that we could. We're still in the process of that, and I'll talk about that. Then we switched to 100% clean and renewable energy. And then finally, we took other measures in terms of trying to be a more sustainable residence, and also in terms of a lifestyle that I'll mention also briefly at the end. And maybe just one other thing that I thought might be interesting. So, I thought, I live in enlightened Ann Arbor, progressive Ann Arbor. Well, there was a restrictive deed on our house in 1945, which read, "No part of the premises shall ever be sold to, leased to, or occupied by any persons not of the Caucasian race, except as guests or servants." And that was signed by a very, very well-known administrator at the University of Michigan. In fact, the residence hall is named after him. So that's just an interesting aside. So the first thing that we did was contract with Metal Lark Builders as a general contractor to do envelope improvements. Of course, the first thing that we had them do was conduct a blower door test and then take thermal imaging, and you can see some of the images here. We had an air changes per hour at 50 pascals of 13.5, and we were told that a rough estimate of that would be like having a hole in your roof that is roughly 3 feet by 3 feet. So you can imagine we were just, pumping air out the roof, and well, not as much out the roof, but all the leaks in the house. I think most of you have seen these pictures before. Yellow is, relatively speaking, warmer. That means it's better insulated and there's not a lot of air leakage. And then you get into blues and purples, and those are areas that, are either very poorly insulated and or very leaky. And we had problems all over. So the first thing that we did is we took that information and we paid Metal Lark to subcontract and do a computer modeling of the HVAC loads. I have a bunch of information here and also some information on current best practices. My belief is that it was probably wasted money, because I think we ended up doing probably what we would have done anyhow. But nevertheless, I thought going in that this might be worthwhile. It was something that was recommended to us. And so we went ahead and did it. And I'll show you what we then proceeded to do. So the first thing is we installed open cell polyurethane spray foam insulation. It's got an R value of about 4 inches per inch. And we took down all the ceilings in the house. We didn't want to remove the membrane roof. That would have been very expensive, although this was not exactly cheap either. And we spray foamed all of the entire roof. These are, like I said, the 2x10 roof rafters that we have here. We also, in the basement and in the crawl space, took out furring strips and walls. Basically we had like a 1/2 inch air gap between the block walls, and we took those out and put 2x4s in and offset those so that we could get a thermal break. And we did that in all of the crawl space, as you can see on the right, and in about 80% of the basement area. And as you can see on the bottom left, these are sort of typical leak areas. And if you think about the whole perimeter of a house and all the points where you are breaking the joists you've got a lot of leakage around those places. And our basement and all of our crawl space was completely uninsulated when we bought the house. And then we did some other small things. We had a mail slot in the door that leaked like crazy. We blocked that. And we also had vents to a Florida room or 3-season room where you could have a louvered vent, but we know that we had a lot of losses through that as well. So we plugged those up. The next thing that we did was we replaced all of our windows. Our house has 3 skylights, and we put in these Wasco polycarbonate windows, and they're filled with a gel called Lumera Aerogel. And from what I've read, it's supposed to be the highest R value per inch of thickness. And you can see on the lower left, you get diffuse light, so you can't see through them, but that's not a problem being a skylight. You get a significant reduction in the heat transfer, and you get insulation value. It attenuates sound, and it also obviously stops any kind of moisture from getting in the house. The other thing that we did is we replaced all of the windows. I mean, we knew that we were going to do this when we bought the house because they were a disaster. Being aluminum framed, aluminum's obviously a good conductor. They weren't insulated, and you can see here, hopefully on your small screens, these Elpin windows. They're manufactured in Colorado. They're fiberglass frames. They're insulated. They have 2 panes of glass, and suspended in the middle is a coated film, and then they're filled with an inert gas. And for a fixed pane, we have some fixed panes, most of our sliders, but our value is in the range of 6 to 6.7. So that's really good for a window, especially at the time 5 years ago. And having done all of that, we improved our air changes per hour from 13 down to roughly 5.5. That's still not very good. Just to put that into context, the current residential code allows a max of 3, I think. And if you look at passive houses, they're getting down to 0.6, I think the value is. And I'll talk more about that at the end. And then obviously, so we did improve the leakage somewhat, and I want to get that better. And then obviously the other thing that we did is we improved the insulation values throughout the house. So the next thing that we did is we looked at our mechanicals, our HVAC, our appliances, and our lighting. I showed early on that we had a very old furnace, very inefficient. You know, new furnaces are up to almost 99% efficient, although that's not really a very good way of measuring gas furnaces, because you still, you have the potential of heating, burning gas, and that burns at, I don't know, whatever, a couple thousand degrees Fahrenheit, and you're using that to raise the temperature of your house up to 70 some degrees maybe. So it's really not a very smart way of using a fuel to heat a house, because a lot of the potential is essentially lost. So we went to geothermal. I worked for Bosch, and Bosch makes geothermal units. So I have a Bosch geothermal unit, of course, in my house. The next thing that we did a couple of years later is we replaced our hot water heater with these Rheem electric hot water heaters, and they are hooked up to a secondary heat pump, basically, off of the main heat pump. And what you essentially do is you preheat the water in the first tank on the left, and you draw from that, and then that goes into the second pump. That preheating happens both in the cooling and in the heating mode. So you get some benefit from that. The first heater doesn't even have a heating element, and the second one does. These are relatively expensive water heaters, but they have a lifetime warranty for residential use, as long as you're, flushing them occasionally and things like that. You can see also on the right, the drilling that we had done. We have 3 wells that are roughly 350, 375 feet deep. We can talk more about that maybe if we want to. And then Before I leave that in geothermal, I should also mention to everybody that not long ago, about a month ago, one of the GLREA board members, Alan Waller, did a whole session on geothermal heat. And I encourage anybody that's interested in geothermal to take a look at that. It was posted to the GLREA YouTube channel. I think, let's see, I have it here, on November 6th. So if you're interested in geothermal, definitely take a look at that, and we can talk more about that tonight. Yeah, the other things that we did is we had to replace our appliances. The appliances that came with the house were really old. And one of the things that we did, we have a front load washer, but we also have a heat pump dryer that we use. But I'll tell you later, we don't actually use it very much. And then the other thing that we did is we replaced all of our lighting with LEDs. And so all these things are, significant energy improvement or efficiency measures. So I mentioned, the next strategy is to go to renewable energy. I'll show you another picture of a house later on. Right now, I don't have solar on the roof. With a flat roof, I was a little bit concerned for two reasons. First of all, leaks on flat roofs can start in one place, but then be visible someplace horizontally, in a completely different spot. And I didn't want to be hunting for potentially leaks underneath a whole bunch of solar panels. And then the other thing is the roof had about another 15 years of life on it. And I didn't want to put solar panels up and then have to disassemble it and then replace the roof and then put them back on. So I instead procure all of my power through Arcadia. They used to be called Arcadia Power. Now it's just Arcadia. By the way, they're a benefits corporation, and I can talk a little bit more about what that means. But basically, it's a company that has slightly different governance, where they basically promise that they will provide additional transparency, and they also are serving not just profits, but people and the planet. I get 100% wind subscription. Basically, what I'm doing is purchasing renewable energy certificates, and those are retired. And Arcadia, in a sense, is set up like a bank. So just like if I were to set my bank up to pay my DTE bill for me every month, Arcadia pays the DTE bill, and I pay Arcadia, and I pay Arcadia on the electric side a premium of about 1.5%. And with all the measures that we've taken, we average $205 a month, and that includes charging our electric vehicle, which is our primary vehicle. Another interesting thing about Arcadia, you might be able to make it out in the lower right, is they do on-bill financing. So I don't know if this is available in every state yet. I haven't used it because I did all this before I signed up with them. But obviously one impediment to a lot of people is just being able to pay for all this. And a lot of people just don't have the upfront financing to do it. Michigan Saves is a good alternative to that, but doing it on bill is attractive. And Arcadia apparently now provides that for at least some types of upgrades. So some of the other things that we did, we had a fair amount of turf grass. In fact, each one of these areas that you see here used to all be turf grass. So on our side yards, on the upper right, we installed 11 raised vegetable beds. And then on the lower left, we put in a lot of native plants, shrubs, and some second generation trees. We just did that actually this summer. And in the backyard, that hillside there used to be a miserable hillside of weeds and grass, and it was no fun to mow. And so I put in a native prairie there with native forbs and grasses. And then just to the right of that little native prairie, we have a native forest fragment, and we upgraded that or enhanced it. And you can see here some of the other property improvements that we made in that area is we removed a ton of little invasive trees and saplings, and we planted a lot of next generation native trees, and we tried to mix in a whole bunch of different kind of species, because every species supports different other kinds of species, mammals, etc. So we wanted to be sustainable that way. We planted fruit trees. 2 of these are actually in the native forest fragment, the 2 pawpaws that we have. We planted also apples, peach, pear, and plum. And we installed 2 beds. You can see one on the lower right for raspberries. We have one on the left for blackberries and kiwis. We put in a bunch of birdhouses, feeders, and a bath, and put in a pollinator hotel, we did a compost bin, and we also have 2 retractable clotheslines, which we use year round. That's my good German wife, being a good frugal German, growing up in the frugal part of Germany. Well, all Germans are pretty frugal, but so we did that as well. From a transportation point of view, we're very fortunate that we live within walking distance of downtown, and so a lot of times we'll walk to campus for different kinds of events there. Also, some of my meetings, when they were in person, used to be on campus. We can get downtown in 30 minutes. So in the summertime or fall and spring, we almost always walk downtown. We're going out for dinner or just going to the library or something like that. I use my bike a lot. I'll even bike to Energy Commission meetings in the middle of January if the roads are dry. You can see we have 2 vehicles. We have a 2012 Volt. We have a charger in our garage. And then our Outback is an internal combustion engine, but it's somewhat better in that it's got some lower emissions. There's a class called partial zero emissions vehicle, and we have one of those. And then finally, from a lifestyle perspective, we have moved mostly to plant-based diet, not entirely, but mostly. And then we do our best to reduce, reuse, and recycle. So what does that mean in terms of next steps? Well, we are planning on becoming a 1-vehicle family. We were going to sell it, actually, our Subaru to our son, but it turned out to be more of a car than what he wanted. So probably in the early New Year's is we're going to sell that. I need to install a smart thermostat. We still have a natural gas cooktop, and our plans are to get rid of that and replace that with an induction cooktop. That means the only things that will stay that prevent us from really being zero emissions is we still have a gas grill and we have a gas fireplace, which we use, I don't know, 15, 20 times maybe a winter. I also want to improve our leakage. There's a couple of possible culprits here. Our stove hood is an original stove hood, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of leakage there and chimney effect. And then the other thing that I want to do, you can see in the lower right, that's an aerial view of our house, and you can see it's a perfect location. As I said before, it's a flat roof, and the roof still has some age on it. So I may do one or the other, but one is potentially augment my wind power by investing in community solar, either through Arcadia, they have a program where you can do that, or locally if that's enabled through legislation in Michigan. And then the other possibility is at some point, obviously, re-roofing. I would probably use a white membrane roof, add some insulation so that there's a thermal break for the roof rafters, and then install rooftop solar. And with bifacial solar, that would be something that would be probably pretty attractive. So that rounds out what we've done with our house. And what I want to talk about now is our investment in Ozone House. Was with my wife's concurrence. We created with some other people Ozone House Solar, a limited liability corporation, and we used a set of templates that are from the Michigan Interfaith Power and Light organization called Solar Faithful. And again, Murray Rosenthal presented a detailed version of this in, I don't know, let me look here, I got some notes, I think, back in late May, posted in early June to the YouTube site, the GLRA YouTube site. He went through in detail their 18-step process. I'm going to not do anywhere that level of depth, but I think it's still interesting for me to tell you what we did and maybe look at it a little bit different angle than Murray did. So the nice thing about this model is that it was developed because non-for-profit entities, obviously, because they're not paying taxes, are not eligible for the solar tax credit, and they also can't take depreciation like a for-profit entity can. And so this lack of financial incentive means that a lot of nonprofits forego installing solar because it's just not as, or at least at the time, it's getting obviously more and more interesting, but still it's not as attractive as it is for we individuals or for profit-making companies, even though there's obviously a lot of interest from stakeholders. And the Solar Faithful model provides an alternative structure to be able to solve that problem. And the cool thing is that the basic approach can be basically applied to any kind of nonprofit, you know, a non-governmental organization, a house of worship, schools, both public and private, and government buildings for that matter. So in our case, Ozone House is an organization. It's a nonprofit that's now in Ypsilanti. Its mission is to help youth, and what they really do is provide housing and services and support to runaways, homeless children, a lot of LGBTQ kids that have been kicked out of their house and don't have contact with their family anymore, and they really have no place to go. And this is a brand new facility that was built just outside of Ypsilanti. That's the Huron River in the background. And you can see next to the picture, we put in almost a 31 kilowatt peak installation, both on the flat roof in the back and then on the front roof in the front. There are 4 of us that got together to do this. Jan Culbertson was sort of the lead on this. She had a relationship and did a lot of pro bono work for Ozone House. Her mother, myself, and another fellow from Ann Arbor all got together, and we formed this limited liability corporation to be able to put solar on the roof. We contracted with distributed power. Brandon Knight, I think distributed power is a GLRA member, and I believe also Brandon has done also a My Solar Hour. So Brandon did the work for us on the rooftop. This is a schematic of how this works. So note in the upper right that everything that is a flow of electricity is shown in blue, and everything that is a flow of money is in green. And so I'll explain this briefly. So we have solar on the rooftop, and that is going through a smart meter. And when the array is producing, obviously during the daytime, not at night, it's then supplying power, as you can see the arrow, from the meter into Ozone House. And it is providing, on average, about 40% over a year of the estimated needs of Ozone House. I don't know what that is right now. It's a brand new facility, and I haven't checked recently, but that's the way it was laid out. So that has to be augmented by DTE at the bottom. And you can see that's a 2-way arrow, because there are probably times in the summertime when the solar array is producing in the middle of the day more power than what Ozone House might need. And so that is flowing into the DTE grid. But then when the array is not producing enough power, then DTE is providing or augmenting power from the solar array to be able to provide the needs to Ozone House. And Ozone House then in turn, they pay DTE for the power in green that they get from DTE, and they pay us for the power that is generated by our solar array on their roof. And very briefly, and I'll talk more about later, but we provide them a 10% discount over the DTE rate. And so as the DTE rate would change, our rate would also change. And that's part of the agreement, and I'll get into that in a few minutes. So as I mentioned before, there was a one-time payment from Ozone House Solar LLC to Distributed Power to put the array on the roof. And then of course, every year we, because we get income from Ozone House, we pay money to the IRS. And then IRS, in a sense, pays money to us in the sense that that's why there's a two-way arrow. We get a credit when we installed it, the federal tax credit. We also, there's a minor payment too, that's on a backup slide. We contracted for some liability insurance. And so there's one other small money flow, but it's not all that significant. So in terms of governing documents, we had to form an LLC. So we have an operating agreement, and that was signed by all of the LLC partners. Then we have a purchase power agreement that's signed by the LLC and Ozone House, and that is backed up by an Excel file exhibit, which is essentially an open book calculation of all the financials and the return on investment. It defines exactly how much we charge them, what we get in terms of credits from the IRS and so on and so forth. And it's just, like I said, an open book for everybody to see exactly how money flows and what our earnings are and so on and so forth. And this is reviewed then annually between the LLC and Ozone House. And then finally, we had this one-time contract that was signed by LLC and Distributed Power to put the solar array on the roof. And all of these agreements were based on the Michigan IPL Interfaith Power and Light. They're templates, and in many cases we simplified those just because we didn't need what we felt was some of the clauses in there. But their templates are a really good starting point. So what's the win-win in this? So Ozone House, as I mentioned, gets a 10% reduction on its electric rate for power generated by the array. They indirectly receive the benefit of the tax rebate and the depreciation of the capital investment through the limited liability corporation. They have the opportunity and intend to buy the array from us once it's fully depreciated, and we take advantage of those financial benefits. And at that time, the LLC would be dissolved, and that can happen anytime after 5 years. And then obviously just the fact that it's on the roof and there's, meters with the inverters and everything, there's an opportunity to educate staff and residents about solar energy. So from our perspective, the LLC, for us, it's a triple bottom line investment. It's not something that we're just, investing in big for-profit companies. We essentially took money out of our investment accounts, and it's like a bond almost, because it's a low yield, but it's a very low risk investment. This solar array is going to be producing electricity certainly for as long as we own it, and hopefully many more years after Ozone House buys it from us. We're reducing greenhouse gases and other emissions by replacing DTE's power, and it develops a model. We wanted to develop a model together with Michigan IPL and lessons learned for others' use. In terms of distributed power, they got a moderately sized project with fairly high visibility. Then there's the ability to, what we did is we worked with another party to do training of some current Ozone House youth and a couple of recent graduates. So they went through some solar training, and then they were actually used on the job by Distributed Power. And that way Distributed Power could identify some good workers with potential. And it's my understanding that they hired at least a couple of those Ozone House residents or alumni And so that was obviously a benefit for both distributed power as well as Ozone House residents. They got to try out a trade-related job, and as I said, land a job with distributed power. And then, of course, finally, there's local economic benefits and the environmental benefits that I talked about earlier. And just a few lessons learned. The federal tax credit is declining. I think most of us know that in this call. One thing that's notable is that if you start work in 1 year and you're spending at least 5% of the value of the solar installation, then you can still claim the tax credit for that year. And so next year it drops to 22%, and then it takes a big dive down to 10% in 2022 and beyond. So, in the next 13 months or so, anybody that really wants to take advantage of this fully should do so during that time frame. Even with the templates that we got from Interfaith Power and Light, every situation is unique in terms of the host organization, the building, the board members, etc. So we had multiple meetings just to hammer out what we wanted to do in terms of our contract and things like that. And at least our belief was that keeping it relatively simple made sense. Like I said, we dropped a few features of the Solar Faithful templates from Michigan IPL. That also applies to the financing goals and assumption, and because that's pretty complicated and it takes some time to reach agreement on. We have to make a profit, and the profit has to be enough that the IRS says this is truly a profit-making entity, and we are not just doing this to earn 0.1% return and take advantage of the solar tax credit. You have to show that you're making a reasonable return. And we talked about the 2%, whether it should be a higher number or a lower number, and we felt that was relatively safe because it's, like I said, a low risk, low yield kind of investment. And the other thing that we were fortunate with between people on the board of Ozone House and then our group is that we had people with a lot of different knowledge sets, and every one of us were able to contribute positively, including just simply, like I say, asking good questions. So that is our solar story, and I'd like to open it up for questions and your comments and anything else. And I have some backup slides about Ozone House, and I'll do my best to answer any questions or maybe defer to others who know more than I do. So.
Hey, thank you, John. That was very interesting. Boy, you covered a lot of ground fairly quickly. And I think talking about your home and also the Ozone House was very interesting, the different aspects. Let me start off with one question. I'm wondering, how much legal and financial help did you need in kind of dealing with the Ozone House project? Did you need a lot of hours from a lawyer or some sort of special financial advisor?
We were lucky that I think the president of the board of Ozone House is an attorney. And so that's why I talked about having a diverse team. And, we felt, like I said, Jan had a relationship with Ozone House, and we felt very comfortable accepting her input. The templates from Solar Faithful had already gone through attorneys as well. So, there was essentially 2 layers of attorneys that had looked at a lot of these documents. And so we felt really comfortable with the arrangement. To be honest with you, I suppose I'm better able to judge that early next year, because our array first started generating and being hooked up to the DTE grid in June. And so at the end of this year is when we're going to sit down and we're going to go through all the financials with them and everything. And if we get any kind of arguments, then we'll know whether the legal agreements were well done or not. But we feel confident that that's really not going to be an issue.
So if anybody wants to ask a question, just unmute yourself and go ahead.
So it's on distributed generation then? It's not metered?
It is. It's on inflow outflow. It was, it went, so it's not on net metering anymore. And that's, partly it's the roof, and how much size, space we had on the roof. But like I said, we're only doing 40% of their needs. And so generally there's not a lot of outflow. So it's not, obviously not as good as net metering was, but at least we're not producing a lot of excess that we're not getting paid very well for.
Yeah, if you don't outflow any, then it's as good as net metered. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you don't have any. If there's not really any more room on the roof, then
yeah.
That's about what you can do. Yeah.
Exactly.
They have the parking lot out back. You could put. You could put.
But we could put ground mount in the back or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or over their parking lot someday. Yeah, we hadn't thought about that.
John, do you have an idea of how long it'll take to pay back the ground source heat pump?
No. To be honest with you, that was purely an environmental investment. In fact, a lot of the things that I showed you on my home, I have to be honest with you. I had a really good career with Bosch. I did very well, income-wise and things like that. And this is for me now as a volunteer, payback time in a sense, payback to society. And these are things that I wanted to do on our house. Hopefully we're not the last owner of the house, and people don't have to undo what we did and do it one better. These are things that will last for many, many years. And that was what I felt with the geothermal system. That's going to be around for a long, long time. Especially the major investment is the wells. I think the wells alone might have been something like $30,000. I mean, they're crazy expensive. And I got a discount on the geothermal unit itself. I mean, they're relatively small. And the units themselves are not that expensive. I mean, Alan would know a lot better. They're not a whole lot more than in terms of the big scheme of things than a furnace and an air conditioning unit. I mean, you've got both of those in one, essentially, in your basement. It was also another thing is, the old air conditioning unit was right outside of our deck. So if we would be sitting in our deck in the summertime, we'd have the air conditioner compressing, going, kicking on and off and making a lot of noise. And so we put all that inside, behind the door, in the utility room, in the basement. And so it's really comfortable heat. It's more efficient than an air source heat pump. And it was just something that we want to do essentially for posterity's sake, I guess you could say.
Thank you.
John, this is John Gorley. You said at the beginning, pretty quickly, you talked about Arcadia as your source of renewable energy. And I wonder if you could elaborate on that. What kind of renewable energy do they produce? Where are they located?
Sure.
How does that work financially?
So Arcadia is something that I came across in my work as an energy commissioner for the city of Ann Arbor. Actually, Wayne, who's participating tonight, sat in on some of those meetings. Arcadia has wind energy in mostly Western states, like I think one of the Dakotas, Texas. They have a couple of wind farms in Texas, and a couple of other places. Actually, I could go into the presentation. Let me look at it real quickly and I can tell you, well, it's not that important. It's on their website. And you can actually, I mean, it's a little bit hokey, to be honest with you, I think. So you can actually sign on for 50% wind for free. And it's sort of a hook. And that's what I did initially. I did that for a very short time. Actually, I'd been a Michigan and a My Green Power, DTE My Green Power subscriber for many years. I paid my dutifully for probably 10 years. My 2 cents, as soon as that program came out, my 2 cents per kilowatt hour premium. And then I found out that when there was the ballot initiative to implement the 25% RPS, 25% renewable by 2025, I found out that DTE was the second largest contributor to the effort to defeat that ballot initiative. Then I immediately canceled my Green Power subscription and was looking for something else. And like I said, we stumbled upon Arcadia. The fact that Arcadia is a benefits corporation, or a B Corp, you may have heard of B Corp, was appealing. So, you know, they're not maximizing profits. They're doing, you know, things for the planet and for their employees that a typical corporation wouldn't necessarily do. Yeah, so you can also, through Arcadia, you can pay and invest in community solar operations. So you can, and that's all goes through your bill too. So you can, you know, they essentially, like I say, pay your DTE bill, and no, they pay your DTE bill, and you pay them, and then they pay, like I said, DTE, and all these things then go through the bill that they have for you, and you can buy into community solar operations that they have in other states. Like I said, you know, they're not possible here in Michigan, and they typically have installed those in states where utility rates are high, and where there's good incentives, and where there's, you know, high solar radiation, high radiant levels, and that makes it a lot more attractive for them. They're getting, you know, paid well for their installations, and then that makes it an interesting investment for people like us. And the thing that's really good is that there's a lot of people who can't really take advantage of solar. You know, my excuse is my flat roof with the membrane and things like that, and I'm slowly loosening up on that. But there's a lot of people that have poor house orientation. They may have shading. They may be in a rental unit, and they just, other than DTE and Green Power, they have no other option. And Arcadia provides an option. It's completely seamless, and you've got a number of different subscription opportunities.
So when you say you buy in, do you have to buy a solar panel
Yeah,
up front, and then you get the benefit of that over time?
And you can buy, I think, in increments of maybe even panels. I'm not positive about that, but I think you can buy even in increments of panels.
Yeah, I'm being silly about one panel, but
yeah. But I mean, if you want to start, you know, if you're a young person or if you're a renter or whatever the case may be, yeah, you start and then you add more as you can, and it's portable. They operate, I don't think with every utility, but I think the utilities that they have this kind of billing arrangement with is covers something like 90% of the population of the United States. So if you're moving from one territory to another territory, you know, it's portable, and there's not a lot of other options that allow you to do that. So I think it's really attractive. You know, we've shared Arcadia, and there's been some discussion with contacts with Arcadia with the city of Ann Arbor. I mean, I don't know what they'll end up doing in terms of trying to meet their carbon neutrality goal. But for individuals and even for corporations, it could be attractive.
And do they guarantee that that they're really generating energy renewably up to 99% or something like that?
It's from,
there must be some leakage there, but
from solar. The only thing is, you know, I can't vouch 100%. I think from a trust perspective, they would lose a lot if someone were to dig down and find out that what you're paying for are not additional RECs, or I should say, you know, additional energy. Essentially, additionality is a big thing. You know, from what I understand, or at least used to be the case several years ago, that there were RECs from wind farms that had basically never been sold. So the wind farms have been built, and the RECs are simply out there, and people are buying up the RECs and then reselling them. And you're not really creating any new renewable energy that way. My hope is that that's not the case with Arcadia, because, like I said, that would sort of undermine consumer confidence with their value proposition.
Just curious, as a new construction, I know this wasn't part of your presentation, but Ozone House, what in terms of building envelope or other kinds of ways of energy efficiency have they put into the building that could be transferable to other building projects?
So I'd have to find out from Jan Culbertson. Her firm did the work for Ozone House. I know, I can speak to a few things. I know they looked at geothermal and they just couldn't swing it. They had a limited budget. It's a nonprofit. They don't have really deep pockets, and they had to go with high efficiency natural gas furnaces. I'm pretty sure that Jan did the best that she could in terms of windows and in terms of envelopes, in terms of insulation. Whether they went with 2x6 construction or things like that, I don't know. I don't know if they did a whole lot with thermal breaks. I talked with her about it, and she did tell me that for budget reasons, it was limited as far as what she wanted to do versus what actually finally could be done. So that's the problem. The problem is the building code in Michigan, and Wayne can talk maybe more about this if people want to. I know we're getting close to the hour, but the code is just not very strong. We're 2 cycles back as far as the ASHRAE standard, and you build that house and it's there for the next 50 years plus. And if you don't do the right kind of envelope on it, that's why I wanted to do our envelope right. Then that envelope is there, and people are heating, air conditioning, everything else in a very inefficient building.
Hey, John.
Yeah,
Hi.
Mike, go ahead.
Hi, John. John and I are both on the Ann Arbor 2030 Council and Michigan Interfaith Power and Light. We both help with that. And I gave the same presentation in the same group about 6 months ago.
I mentioned that, yep.
And I just put the link to the Michigan Interfaith Power Solar website in the chat. And along with David Lewis, he and I wrote about a 10-page how-to document on how to solarize your house of worship or nonprofit. So
right, it's your 18-point plan, I think, or
yeah, there's 18 points. Yeah.
Yep.
So the simple 18 steps.
Yep, there you go. But they are I mean, it is relatively simple. You guys really did a great job, and I was involved very early on with Emily Drennan in the city of Ann Arbor and sort of conceiving the program and working with IPL. And it's a pity, from what I can see, that more entities haven't used it. I mean, you talked about, I think, 6 or 7. You presented them in a spreadsheet of how many entities back then had done it. But really, it could be done all over the place. I mean, schools, private school. There's just endless possibilities.
Right. It's essentially a win-win. It saves money for the nonprofit, and over the 20-year period, the LLC makes a profit. It's a no-brainer as long as you have the roof space and the sunlight.
I mean, we intend, and Ozone House intends, to buy the solar array, relatively soon. I would say before 10 years are up. And it says in the contract that they have to pay fair market price. But in the end, the LC will decide what fair market price is, and whether it's $1 or $10 or $1,000 or whatever, we'll decide that at the time. But we want to do a social good too. So, but you're right, it is. I mean, if we were to let it go out for many years, because maybe Ozone House wants to put its money somewhere else. I mean, maybe they don't want to put it into the solar array. Maybe they want to do something else in terms of commanding services. But yeah, they have that option.
Hey, John, you did a lot with your house. It's been quite a journey for you. But is there anything, looking back on it, though, you would do differently?
Well, like I said, the computer modeling, I think, was wrong. From what I've read now with insulation, so some of you may be familiar with Eco-Telligent Homes, I think it's called. They're out of Farmington or Farmington Hills, I think. I looked at their website not long ago, and they're using all closed foam cell, spray foam. And what's really important on spray foam is that a lot of the agents that blow up that foam have, especially the not so good ones, have very high what's called global warming potential. CO2 is one, and methane is, I don't know, 20, 30, whatever more times worse. And then you've got some of these agents go up to like 1,000 times worse. And they now have closed foam insulation that has a higher R value than mine, that has a global warming potential of 1. So if anybody is using that, you really want to make sure that you're using the right spray foam, and that gets the highest R value, and also doesn't essentially negate what you're trying to do by using an agent that is going to go into the atmosphere that has very, very high global warming potential. But other than that, almost everything else that we've done, we've been real happy with. And some of this has just been based on time and based on money and things like that. When we had time to do certain things, we wanted to get the house done, obviously, before we moved in. So that was the first set of steps that we took. But otherwise, the one thing is solar on the roof. I'm still trying to decide what to do with solar on the roof. And I'm getting grief all the time from all my solar buddies in
Well, you shouldn't, because you've done a lot, including the Ozone House project. But it's about 8 o'clock, but we still probably have time for a couple more questions if somebody has some.
Yeah, I got a question. John, this is Ravi. Why did you choose Rheem over Bosch?
I don't think Bosch makes hot water heaters. At least, to be honest with you, I don't even know that I went back and looked. So I wasn't working for Bosch anymore. I probably, through a colleague, could have gotten a Bosch hot water heater. Do you know if they do?
Yes, they do. They make tankless ones.
Okay. Well, the tank, yeah. So I did not want to use a tankless. I mean, the tankless, because most of them are natural gas. So these are the natural gas ones that you basically put under your sink, or right in the bath, right next to the bathroom, right? That's the one you're talking about, Robbie, right?
No, they make both. They make the smaller ones that go in right next to or right under the cabinets, and they also make the bigger ones.
By the way, Robbie,
for the whole house.
So yeah, I didn't want the little tankless ones. I wanted something that was electric, and I wanted to be able to use the de-superheater, because you get the benefit of that from having the geothermal system. And I don't know if that would be possible with the Bosch units. I mean, Bosch now makes and has joint ventures for. Thank you, Janice. Bosch makes air pump heat sorts, heat pumps, air source heat pumps in a joint venture. They're in terms of heating and air conditioning, they're also a major player globally in that area, as they are in a number of other different areas.
Do we have a last question before we break? Anybody like to get in the last question?
Hey, John, you mentioned 3 wells. What are the 3 wells? Are they all for the geothermal, or is one just for your?
Yeah, no, we are on city water. So the geothermal are 3 wells. They're filled with like an antifreeze-like compound. They're all tied together into one reservoir that then feeds into the house. And basically all you're doing is you're taking, in the winter time, if you will, heat out of the ground, and you're transferring that through a heat exchanger into the house, and you're reversing that, and you're taking the heat out of the house and putting it into the ground in the summertime. And that's just a big heat exchanger loop that you have down in the ground.
Okay. So they drill the well, and then there's
Tubing
that's pushed down into each one that goes down and back.
Yep, exactly. And by the way, I've been in contact again recently. It was a little bit of a gap in communication. There is a company here in Michigan that's come up with a proprietary tubing design, and they claim to be able to reduce the number of linear well feet by roughly 1/3 to maybe 60%, which is really significant. As I mentioned, the wells are really expensive. And so if you can reduce that even with a slightly higher cost of the tubing, then that's really, really important. And the company is called Geothermal Innovations. They say that since their latest design iteration, they've done about 300,000 linear feet of wells without any leak issues. They had a leak on a previous design actually under previous ownership as well. And they've doing a lot of projects out east and in Michigan. And that's something that could be really attractive for cost reasons, but also sometimes there's just not a lot of space. You get into cities or even downtown areas and you just don't have a lot of space to put all these wells in. And I was in a phone call this morning, like Wayne, there was a person in a subdivision, and the setbacks from the lot, the houses are close to each other, you just can't get in and put in geothermal wells, multiple geothermal wells. And so where you can reduce the number of wells and also maybe get in with smaller equipment, that might be really, really attractive.
So how deep are your wells then?
Somewhere around 350, 375 feet each. So pretty deep. That's why, again, that's the expense. I don't know if you saw the big rigs that came in. Yeah.
Well, thank you, John. This has been really interesting. I appreciate taking the time to kind of share all this information. And we're going to skip the next 2 Thursdays because of the holidays, but the next Michigan Solar Story will be the first Thursday in January. So I'd like to wish everybody happy holidays and stay safe and warm and stay well.
And thanks to GLREA for hosting this and for being a part of the whole education process for us. Thanks, John.
Well, yeah, that's what we're up to.
Thanks, John.